Hey, this is Jared of Cynautical. My podcast is on alternative health and wellness. Um, I also touch on biohacking and a few other topics as well. My podcast is available on Spotify, iTunes, also on my YouTube as well too. Check it out, and I'll see you there.
Welcome to episode 2 of season 3 of the Lifelong Health and Fitness podcast. Today, I'm joined by Sarah Malone, owner of P.O.W.E.R, The Secret Place, a holistic healing collective dedicated to helping you overcome emotional, relational, and spiritual blocks. As a clinical hypnotherapist and spiritual teacher, Sarah uniquely blends therapy and spirituality in a refreshing, straightforward way. She gained recognition as a holistic therapist on a reality TV show and is the author of Affirmations for a Peaceful Life. Featured in P.O.W.E.R magazine and Yahoo Finance, Sarah also hosts her own podcast called Ignite the Spark Within. Known as the real deal in the healing community, Sarah leads transformational retreats and workshops, striving to bring more of heaven to earth. Now on to our conversation. Well, Sarah, first, I'd like to thank you for joining me today.
Thanks so much for having me, Sylvia. I've been looking forward to this for a while now.
I'm happy to have you join me today. So I did listen to your podcast. I could tell you have a lot of experience. Can you first tell me a bit about your business, Spark the Secret Place?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So Spark the Secret Place is a holistic healing collective. And what I like to tell people is that under the umbrella of Spark, I do many things. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, spiritual healer. I run retreats. I have a few online growth courses. We have a membership community. Overall, just to summarize all of what Spark is, it's a place, a sanctuary of a place for people to receive healing at a core level in order to reconnect them with themselves, come back home to themselves, with God, and with others. So essentially, we are aiming to merge and bring more of heaven to earth, enlightening people into their purpose.
Okay, and what inspired you to start your business and your practices?
Well, I think that for me, it started at a very young age. I have my own set and story of traumas and things that I've had to heal from. But the spark, pun intended, that ignited the fuse into what it is today was actually a divorce from a narcissistic husband years back. And being in that place, in that space for 5 too many years, I realized and I made a decision for myself that I would never allow myself to feel imprisoned or in chains anymore. I wanted to fully express myself into this world. I wanted to fully experience what I was here to do. And I really made a firm decision at that point. I had been helping people in the fitness and nutrition world for 10, 12 years up to that point. And it naturally, just by making that decision, it naturally started guiding me towards way deeper things. My spiritual gifts came through, and I was on a path towards just more of the holistic side of working with people in that capacity.
Okay, so, and it's interesting, you have a story of dealing with a narcissist. And in a previous podcast, I interviewed someone about that, and I'll connect you with them in the future. But that can take a lot of energy from you. So correct me if I'm wrong. Did you find that you had more to give as well when you were done with that? Because the narcissist likes to steal energy from people who have a lot of energy and gifts to give. So did you find that you had more that you could have been doing for your clients the whole time? You just weren't aware of it?
100%. 100%, Sylvia. And, you know, what I realized now that I do what I do is I know, at the end of the day, A narcissist really is, I talk a lot, I do a lot of workshops on this too, about the ego and the subconscious mind and the soul and kind of merging the two. What I know now is that a narcissist really is just a big internal baby. That's it. They're just big babies. And because if you think about what a narcissist does and how they operate, it's if I don't get my way, I whine and scream and put up a fit. Like everybody's going to know about it. I have to be the center of attention, right? If you're stealing it, I will overpower you. And it's all of the stuff that a child throwing a temper tantrum would do. So I have so much compassion now for my ex-husband, but at the time, even looking back on pictures, you can see that I was drained. You
Uh-huh.
could see that I was lifeless. I had less color to me. And so, yes, absolutely. Inside, I was craving, and that's the problem. That is the exact problem with what I was feeling. I was like, I know I can do more. I know I'm supposed to be doing more, and I just can't hear. And I'd like to just encourage listeners too, don't try to be a superhero. There is a thing where you we would love to think that we can overcome any environment and be our best selves. It's not true. It's not the truth, because when our system does not feel safe in an environment, it can't do the higher level things like even think about what's my purpose, because it's worried about safety, security, all these other things.
Alongside that, though, when, as far as being the superhero, have you found, since you've adopted more spiritual practices, that maybe we are not supposed to give ourselves to other people to such a extent because everyone is supposed to find their own power? Have you kind of discovered that?
Do you mean in terms of the narcissist being the superhero?
In terms of the narcissist having to learn how to thrive on their own. So, like, for example, when in the narcissistic abusive situation I was in, and just thinking about other people, when you have empathy for other people. So, you were a trainer, so maybe you have a natural empathy to want to help other people. Um, have you found that that practice, that natural tendency for you, you've had to learn to pull back on it because you realize other people actually need to learn how to develop themselves because they're on their own spiritual journey, and by helping them too much you're kind of um disabling them from growing and expanding on their own. Is that
Oh, well,
part of your practice or?
absolutely. And part of the healing process is knowing where empathy crosses into codependence. And so I can have empathy for somebody and still hold boundaries of my space. Actually, that's the nature of empathy. And one of the things I like to tell my clients too is that here's the difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy says, I'm going to feel this with you. I'm your companion here in it. Sympathy says, I'm going to jump in with you. I'm going to jump into that situation. Like if somebody's in a hole, a dugout hole in the street or something, empathy says, let me get a ladder, climb down there with you. I'll be with you, and then we can climb back up to the top. Sympathy just jumps right in with the person, and now we're both stranded and stuck here. So, and
Hmm.
I mentioned that example to say that empaths specifically need to be careful with boundaries when it comes to boundaries, because we could just give all of it and
Yeah.
say that we're doing some heroic thing, when in reality, it's turning into codependence. And there's a wound inside of us that we need to feel needed, or like we're worthy and valid, and that we're doing something noble, right? So in the healing process, inevitably, we're gonna come to that wound and say, and this is a hard thing for empathic people to do, is to say, even though I can see you suffering and I can help you if you let me, of course, it requires their participation. And if somebody's not participating, we we can only take one step. They have to take the other.
Okay. And going back to your practice and to your business, what is the core mission of Spark, the secret place?
Yeah, I love this question. We were just talking about this today. The core mission of Spark is to quite literally bring more of heaven to earth by helping people bridge their divinity with their humanness. And that's a lot of words, a big words. Essentially, what I'm saying is bringing people back home to themselves and the divinity within, healing what the world has done to us, so that all of us can step into our divine purpose and calling. That would be the core mission of Spark.
Okay, so some of the listeners that they're coming from the fitness community and they might not be, they might not have delved into the spiritual aspect yet. And I was one of those people until literally like a year ago. So what do you mean by our divinity exactly?
Yeah, and I think though the world is in a very similar place where everybody is waking up to this, that hey, there's more than just this physical experience. I am more than just my mind and my thoughts and like what I do on this earth. I actually have a spiritual essence to myself. So when I'm saying divinity, I'm talking about that, the spiritual essence of ourselves, the things that we can't see, right? And almost like the spark representing the spark of creation within you, a unique individual blueprint of you that that is here for a purpose. And so that's what I mean by the divinity, really connecting you to your authentic and intended creation, because we all have an intended creation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and what can our divinity do though? Because sometimes there's so much information out there. They say, you are God or you connect to God and God helps you, or you don't need to connect to God because you are God and you
Yeah.
create, what more specifically can we do when we connect to our divinity and what should we expect by connecting with our divinity and why should we care to do so?
Yeah, and that's such a great question. And I love that you brought up that there's a lot out there that's talking about you are God and you don't need this external um source of power or whatever. And I think that we need to be very careful when we're talking about language and especially in the spiritual world. And this is why we're treading on a very thin ice sometimes when we're talking about these topics. But the Bible says narrow is the gate, and that's for a reason because most people don't get it. Religious people don't get it. New Age spiritualists don't get it. So we are not God. We come from God and we have God within us. There's a very specific difference there of saying I am God. If I am God, that means that I created all of this. I created myself and I created you and all of these types of things. Some people would talk about, well, we create our reality, right? Well, no, we don't create reality. We create our experience of it based on our ego perception and all of these things. And so when we're looking to tap into our divinity, what we're really doing is coming back home and connecting with God inside simultaneously while we are able to connect deeper to God outside in everyone else and in everything else. Now, it doesn't just stop there, though. When we are connecting with our divinity, our spiritual essence, we have no limits. So we have more power, right? We're not, it's not, I am a powerful being, right? I'm just tapping into the source where power comes from when I'm connecting to my divinity. So I have access to that power. And this eliminates, or at the very least, helps us to peel back the layers of our own human limitations of imposter syndrome, right? I can't do this because I'm too old, or I can't do this because I don't have enough time. All the excuses that we can come up with as humans. Now, the reason we want to do this, because this was such a multifaceted question, the reason that we want to do this is, hey, you don't have to. You really don't. You can live a human experience, a human life, because you're going to do that anyways. But the incentive to do this is to have a deeper experience with life, to have a joyful experience with life, and not only to accomplish a purpose, which is what we should all want to do. I feel like that's a noble endeavor, but so you can enjoy and have a more, um, and I would just dare to say magical experience on earth, right? Everyone's always focused on what is going to happen after I die. Well, you're living now. Don't we want to maximize that? Don't we want it to be magical? Because it can
Hmm.
be. So there's many reasons that we want to tap into that. Those are just a few.
Okay. Now, how do you teach people to do that? what do you do to help people to achieve that?
One of the biggest ways in which this happens with people, especially in my retreats, is it's less about me teaching, okay, do this to connect with this part of you, do this and you can feel your divinity. It's more about removing what's getting in the way. And so in the healing process, and a lot of people are talking about healing these days, but and I won't define that to you. But in the healing process, what we're really doing is removing those obstructions that are standing in the way of us connecting to and seeing our divinity within. We all have it. We all have this capability. We all have this essence within. It's just life happens. People be people in, life be life in, and the ego gets in the way. And so we're healing what's standing in the way and removing those obstructions.
Is it possible, and with someone new to spirituality, are you or others promoting that it's possible that our lives can be easier, happier, if we were able to connect to our divine selves? Does life
100%.
have to be as difficult as it is or
No,
as it seems?
you're exactly 100% yes. I am claiming, and I think other people who, well, at least in my space, I can't claim for anybody else's space. At least in my space, I can claim that people are happier, more joyful, and they have and find these internal resources that help them deal with everyday life circumstances, because you can't avoid problems, right? Things are still going to happen, but we can be equipped to deal with these in a much better way. Like we have the tools to do that. Dare I say, we can have fun in life. We
And
can actually have pleasure in life.
yeah, and I'm tempted to ask some other questions about it, but I think that'd be for a different time to go deeper into the specifics of that. Um, Now, you do have your retreats and you have your podcast. So, can you give a bit of information about how your retreats work and maybe what attendees can expect?
Definitely, definitely. So my retreats are the most transformational work that I do. I love my retreats so much. It's what I live for. They're 4 days typically, and I've developed a program basically based off of my years of experience now up to this point. That basically I believe in rapid transformation and growth. I believe it can happen quickly and it can last. We can have both of those. And what I found a lot of the times in the therapy, spiritual space and in the psychology, psychotherapist, all
Psychology,
these.
yeah, psychological
Yes,
space.
exactly. Is that it takes really long and it's usually very painful. And I have another theory. And so I've developed a model that takes people through the levels of healing in a very quick way and then introduces them and helps them find their spiritual selves. So, what people can expect is many different things. We always start the day with the program. It always starts with body in some way, some form of movement, whether it's yoga, Tai Chi. We have somebody for martial arts coming this time to teach them empowering moves, breath work, meditation. We do some subconscious inner child locating and retrieval. And that's part of the program. So once we've retrieved kind of these inner child parts, some of the deeper wounds, we do a couple processes called story work, parts work, and role playing to help heal that. And it's so beautiful because it's so simple, Sylvia. There is a beauty in the simplicity of the model that I have that it blows people's mind. They're like, how is this even possible? So anyways, let's keep going here. So after we have done that work, then the final day is really reignition day. And that's the day when people get introduced through a subconscious meditation that I lead to their spiritual selves. And they can actually visually see or feel their spiritual essence, their spiritual identity. And we just come out kind of on top, empowered, breaking through, and then setting up a plan for going home to keep this integrated. Along the way, we are going to be hiking in the Red Rocks. We have some spa practitioners coming in, for acupuncture, massage therapy, so adventure. And, all of this is done in a beautiful retreat space. We're all there together. And the biggest thing is getting away from your normal routine into a community for 4 days with people doing this type of work. You build connection and community. And sometimes people would even call these people family. And it's really a beautiful, beautiful experience. Every time for me, it transforms and changes me. I can't really say like I'm the mastermind behind it because, and this is what connecting to your divinity does, because you become a channel, right? I got this retreat program and the whole system like delivered to me in a flash because I was connected. So when I'm connected to my divinity, I become a channel to this wisdom that is beyond me. And it works. It works every time.
And where is your retreat located?
Yeah, my retreat's in Sedona. Next year, we may be venturing out to different locations, but my primary location is in Sedona. This next one is November 7th. The next one will be March 6th. And again, it's a 4-day healing and growth retreat.
Okay, and I'll put that information in the podcast description so that listeners can visit your website and find out how to join one of your retreats.
Thank you, Celia. Yeah.
So you said a couple of things there. So connecting with your inner child and then also connecting with your spiritual self, correct? Not your higher self. You said spiritual self. So I'll ask about the inner child. And I'm just curious if this is why you do it. Do you do it to maybe heal childhood wounds, like kind of like to reparent yourself if you had some issues in childhood that are affecting you now as an adult? You could kind of either eliminate that or overcome that and go forward? Or what is the point in connecting with your inner child?
Good question, actually. Well, first of all, let me say this. Most of our painful experiences and our wiring comes from the ages of 0 and 7. So that's where most of our programming is being downloaded because we're so open at that age. So, 90% of our beliefs that we operate our whole life at 0 to 7, you can find it. And so, most of the time we're going to be taken back to, and I'm open to it not being a childhood moment because sometimes it's an adult moment that was severely traumatic, and we do that too. But we go back to the purpose of finding or doing inner child work is to reprogram. And we in two things actually, reprogram and then build healthy relationship on the inside. When we are children and we didn't get what we needed, we still need those things. It's just that we've gone our life with a gap, with a void. And so when we can come alongside ourselves and supply that need, yes, we're reparenting, but we're also developing a relationship with that part that really, really needed that and still does. That in itself is healing. And that actually is the spiritual self doing that, is providing those needs, because your spiritual self has everything that you need.
Okay, and when you see your spiritual self, how does that work? Or should we just let listeners experience that and
Thank
not
you.
go
Yeah.
into?
Yeah. I could give examples. I definitely won't give the process because it wouldn't even make sense until you're there. But I've had people, I love one of my guys. He saw himself walking on water with like a gladiator body and long
Oh,
silver
wow.
hair. And some people just get a feeling. But so it could be as specific as that and vivid as that. Somebody just saw a dragonfly. So it's more of a symbolism and a representation. I'll just show you, your listeners are just listening, but that's a
Uh-huh.
representation of my spiritual self. A
It's
winged,
a bird
it's a winged lioness.
on
She,
your arm. Yeah.
yeah, she has like dove's wings with a lioness. Yeah.
And is that what you saw when you first saw your spiritual self? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wonder what
And
I might see.
for me and for the participants too, it's just a reference point to come back to, right? It's
Okay.
associated with the feeling of power, so that even if they just visualize this later when they're just going throughout their life, boom, you exactly remember who you are and you can come back to that.
Okay. Now, some people in the spiritual community, and this might be going into a different area of spirituality, they believe that other people can attach negativity to you or negative spirits to you or so forth. Does any of your healing deal with that? And if so, does your healing deal with cleansing that?
In the retreat space, no. In the individual space, absolutely. I've had to remove entities or watchful eyes on people many, many times. And it's it's quite freaky. But what usually happens, let me just say this to those people that are listening. Usually those things happen not because somebody did it unbeknownst to them. It's because they were dabbling in something that they didn't know could put something on them.
Hmm. That's
And
interesting.
that is my issue, my warning in the spiritual space, that there are certain things, and you can actually have, I made a podcast on this. There are certain things that we don't want to mess with because they open up spiritual portals and things can become attached to us. And some people are like, I don't know why, just like bad stuff follows me, or I feel tortured all the time, and they don't even realize that they had done it.
Okay. What season would of your podcast would that
It's
be?
definitely recent. I believe it's episode 1 or 2 of the new series, Finding the Truth in the Middle. And it's called, Do These Tools Really Open Portals?
Okay, and your podcast, can you state the full name of your podcast?
Yeah, my podcast is called Ignite the Spark Within. It's on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher. I don't even know if people listen to Stitcher anymore. YouTube, if you want to watch my funny facial expressions. So yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I'll check it out as well. I don't want to take up too much time asking, oh, what's this? What's that? Okay.
I love it.
So, who would you say a perfect client is for you?
You know, to be honest with you, a perfect client is anyone who is actually ready to reach a next level for themselves, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, in any capacity. If they're open, it will happen, and we will find there's always, Sylvia, we're always healing, right? There's always going to be more. There's always going to be a next level, a deeper level. And even if it's just surface, even if it's just the first time, if you're somebody who knows you have patterns or you're functioning in a way that is less than what you know you could be, let's have a conversation. And
Yeah.
also, I will say, people, a lot of people find me due to current relationship struggles, narcissistic relationships.
Yeah.
I'm dealing with that a lot now, and just, yeah, painful heartbreak.
And I'll say one comment on you mentioned how slow traditional therapy can be. And I would say that traditional clinical therapy can also be pretty passive, in my experience. They put a lot on you, not that you're not supposed to do things, but there's a lot of, in my experience, and I've worked with about 3 therapists, and I only did while I was in my teens because I was kind of, my adulthood, I just said I'd rather read books because I just didn't trust therapists at that point. But they would always say the stereotypical, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
And sometimes they would literally even smirk at things I said. And they're just doing their time, getting their paycheck, and they don't really care. So, I
It's,
mean, I think,
I've heard so many horror stories like that, Sylvia.
yeah. And there's I think there's a therapist who wrote a tell-all book. And there's probably more than one in reality who's done this, but about their clients, about their crazy clients. So I think it does matter to have someone who truly cares about um, having people look deeper within themselves and who's open enough to look holistically at a problem versus just speaking and referencing their books and not really caring at the end of the day. Because some people choose medical related professions just for the title or just for the pay, honestly.
Yeah.
So,
And thanks for saying that, because what I find the thing is, and it's a multifaceted issue with psychotherapy and all of that. But it's because we're just analyzing on the surface what the problems are. And I could talk to my friends about that, right? I can recite my same stories and find somebody to vent to about that. But what we're missing is going to the subconscious, the actual a physiological pattern inside of you that has created such a response and such a reaction. So instead of equipping their clients with the tools and helping them rewire themselves, and and by the way, we should be addressing everything holistically because we are so multidimensional. We are body, mind, spirit, soul, all of these things. And so if we're only addressing the mind, we really aren't going to get very far.
Yeah, and
And
if
I
you
also feel bad for some therapists because maybe deep down inside they do want to help their clients deeper, but they're so limited with what they've been taught. And I've heard a holistic therapist say that she switched from the clinical setting to being more holistic. She's like, because I was getting so hopeless and it was sucking the life out of me just having the same conversations with people.
yeah, following the same script,
Yeah.
you know, to get at a problem and not knowing how to maneuver just naturally. So, I mean, I went to a psychologist just for like because I work in the military, just for, they have this series of questions. Takes like an hour and you just fill out these questions and that's how they do it. And it's like, yeah, go in the other room, fill out this survey.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's
And they're
very
like,
deep.
based on this survey, you're like this, and that. And then they just leave for the day and they're done with their work for the day. So,
Oh man, there's a lot I could say on that, Sylvia.
yeah, yeah.
Maybe another deep one.
So, can you tell listeners about your new book, Affirmations for a Peaceful Life?
I would love to. My new book just came out. It's called Affirmations for a Peaceful Life, and it's just what the title says. It is a series of affirmations to help us find peace in all the various trials that we encounter in life. So these are the types of situations that all of us humans encounter, right? Judgment of people, feeling like we're not doing enough, experiencing pain and suffering, experiencing grief, relationship betrayal, all of it, all of the human stuff that we go through. There's an affirmation for it. And if I missed some, I'm sure there'll be an extended version later. But, the main thing is that I want to say about my book is that number one, it has transformed my life. Every time I've gone through this book, it is, again, another reason to connect with your divinity because this book was channeled through me. I was originally writing a book about more of a documentary, like just about my life because I've experienced so much. And well, lo and behold, I start going through some of the most chaotic, heartbreaking times of my life. And these affirmations just started coming to me, and I started writing about them every day. And I realized somewhere along, 4 or 5 affirmations deep, I'm writing a book right now. This is my book, these affirmations. And it's because I needed them first. And every time I would be reading my book or going through it, it was like I was directly experiencing something in the book. And it helped me. It actually helped me. And so I think it's one of those books where you keep it, you highlight your favorites, you come back to them, and they grow with you in a way.
Affirmations, definitely, you have to return to them and remind yourself of even just the simplest phrase can click in your
Yes.
head and go like, oh yeah, I got to remember that. So for listeners, can you please remind them of where they can connect with you online?
Yeah. So I'm on Instagram and Facebook mostly, Sarah_Spark Malone on Instagram and Sarah Spark Malone on Facebook. You can also email me. I'm happy to respond, sarah@sparkflc.com. And, my website, of course, is going to have all of this stuff. It's www.sparkflc.com. You can find my book there. You can find my book on Amazon, Affirmations for a Peaceful Life, or barnesandnoble.com. And yeah, I'm open to just anything that resonated with you. I would love to just talk about it, connect.
Yeah, and I definitely have your book on my list. I haven't purchased it yet, but I am going to get your book. There's so much going on, but I will definitely get your book. And finally, do you have a key message or key messages that you'd like to leave listeners today?
Yeah, I think what I want people to know more than anything is to never settle for less than what is just absolutely magical in life. That each of us has a purpose, a very powerful and important purpose, and we must follow that. We have a responsibility. And also, I want to just bring a message of hope right now. There's a lot going on in the world. And I want to encourage people right now. It is so easy to get swirled up in the fear messages and the chaotic messages. We're being bombarded right now with all of it. But what the world really needs is for us to stay strong in a, a seat of love so that we can counteract the forces of evil and fear and worry and anger and separation and division and all of these things. And we really need to come together right now instead of just running around like chickens with our head cut off. And that, Sylvia, actually, to answer your previous question, is the probably most important reason that you want to connect with your divinity. Because
Okay.
when we are disconnected with our divinity, is we lose our crap. I don't know if I can swear on your show. We lose,
Yeah.
we lose it. And the world needs us to be centered in that right now. We
Okay.
need to be centered in that right now.
Yeah, I agree. We have to learn how to be positive and to see the humanity in people, but also the spirit in people.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll end at that. And I'd like to thank you again, Sarah, for joining me. And I hope we could do a future episode because I had like a ton of questions come up, but I know it's better for a different time.
I felt it. I would love to. And I would love to have you on my podcast, Sylvia. So your listeners should go over to my show and check out a show between you and I.
Yes, I'll definitely set that up with you.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Sylvia.
That's it for this episode. Please see the description to connect with today's guest, Sarah Malone. And please share and rate this podcast on your preferred platform. Thank you for listening and stay strong and well.